He knew they were coming for him. He said it, he wrote it, he warned his family about it. And just 1 week before it happened, he told reporters, "I am a marked man."
Perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh yes, I probably am a dead man already.
This is Timeless Perspective, where history speaks for itself. On February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X stepped onto a Harlem stage. 3 men rushed him, shots rang out, and history rewrote itself in silence. But what if I told you his death wasn't just an assassination, that it was a cover-up, foretold by FBI memos, watched by infiltrators, and later sealed away in classified archives? This isn't the Malcolm X that they teach in school. This version is the truth about Malcolm X that was buried for decades. And once you see the fire that they tried to extinguish, you will never look at justice or America the same way again. We're told to choose between Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, as if one represented peace and the other represented rage. As if history can only celebrate the dreamer and not the disruptor. But Malcolm X was never just a reaction. He was a philosopher of justice, a strategist of truth, and one of the most misrepresented men of the 20th century.
He's not teaching hate, he's teaching history.
He was born Malcolm Little. He watched his father be killed by white supremacists.
And again, in fact, my father was killed by the Ku Klux Klan.
He watched his mother disappear into a mental institution. By 20, he was in prison. By 30, he had become the most feared voice in America. His rise wasn't built on hate. It was built on truth and a refusal to lie to the oppressed. But what made him really dangerous wasn't just what he said, it was what he became.
It's not a problem of integration or separation. It's a problem of human rights.
Because Malcolm X did something few revolutionaries live long enough to do. He changed. He grew. And that is what made him truly unstoppable.
And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
Before the speeches, before the fire, before by any means necessary, there was a boy named Malcolm Little. Born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1925, he was the 4th of 8 children. His father, Earl Little, was a proud Garveyite, a follower of black nationalist Marcus Garvey of Jamaica, a preacher, an organizer, and a target. When Malcolm was 6 years old, his father's body was found mangled on streetcar tracks. Police called it an accident, but his family knew white supremacists had been threatening him for months. Not long after, Malcolm's mother, Louise, was institutionalized, broken by grief, racism, and a system that punished black independence. Malcolm was split from his siblings, shuffled through foster homes, and in school, he was considered brilliant and bright. They even called him class president. But when he told a teacher he wanted to be a lawyer, he was told, "That's no realistic goal for a Negro." That moment stuck. It wasn't just rejection, it was a message: know your place. But Malcolm Little wasn't built for silence. By 20, Malcolm had become exactly what society expected. A hustler, a thief, a dropout swallowed by the streets of Boston and Harlem. But it was in a prison cell, not a church, not a school, where his real dedication began. At 21 years old, Malcolm was sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison for burglary. But behind bars, something shifted. He read obsessively. Dictionaries, history books, legal texts. He copied entire encyclopedias by hand. Then came the letters. His brother introduced him to the Nation of Islam, a movement preaching black self-sufficiency, separation from white society, and spiritual awakening. Malcolm gave up pork, gave up smoking, gave up his name, Little, a slave name, and became Malcolm X. He was paroled in 1952, but he didn't just re-enter society. He attacked it. With sharper suits, sharper words, and intellect forged in confinement, Malcolm X became the Nation of Islam's most electrifying minister. While others preach patience, Malcolm preached power. We didn't
land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.
America couldn't ignore him. And for the first time in a century, it didn't want to. By the early 1960s, Malcolm X wasn't just a minister, he was a movement. He built mosques, recruited thousands, and brought the Nation of Islam from obscurity to national headlines.
I don't believe in any form of segregation or any form of racism.
But success breeds tension.
I'm against any form of segregation and against racism.
Behind closed doors, Malcolm began to question the nation's leadership, particularly its founder, Elijah Muhammad. He learned that Muhammad had fathered children with several secretaries, women who came to him for spiritual guidance. Malcolm was devastated.
I turned in a different direction.
He had built his life around discipline, loyalty, and truth. When he confronted the leadership, he was told, "Stay quiet." Then came the public split. In 1963, after President Kennedy's assassination, Malcolm called it chickens coming home to roost.
He said the chickens came home to roost, and which means
The nation suspended him. And suddenly, Malcolm was out, ostracized, silenced, and alone. But they didn't just remove him. They followed him. Wiretaps, surveillance, informants in his inner circle. The nation turned against him. The government tracked his every move. And yet, in the shadow of betrayal, Malcolm didn't fade away. He evolved.
I believed in him and believed in his solution.
In 1964, Malcolm boarded a plane to Saudi Arabia. A man exiled from his movement, shadowed by the FBI, marked for death. But what he found in Mecca was something America had never shown him. Muslims of every skin color praying side by side. Brothers breaking bread who would have been segregated in the US. He saw a vision of Islam that transcended race. And when he returned, he didn't just change his views, he changed his voice. He no longer called all white people devils. He spoke of systems, not skin. He founded Muslim Mosque Inc. and the Organization of African American Unity, modeled after the Pan-African solidarity you saw abroad. He met with world leaders. He petitioned the UN to charge the United States with human rights violation against black Americans.
We feel that it should be taken out of the jurisdiction of the United States government and the United States courts and taken into the United Nations in the same manner that the problem...
And suddenly, Malcolm was no longer just a black nationalist. He was an international revolutionary. One who believed in peace, but not submission. And that made him more powerful than ever before and more dangerous to those who want him silenced. February 21st, 1965. Audubon Ballroom, Harlem. Malcolm X steps onto the stage. He greets the crowd. His daughters and wife are in the front row. And then, disruption. A man yells. Security turns. 3 gunmen rushed forward. Shots erupt. 21 bullets. Malcolm X dies at 39. A father, a husband, a global voice, silenced, but not erased. In the chaos that followed, questions emerged. Why was there no proper security? Why had the FBI, who had been tracking him for years, not intervened? It took decades, but eventually, 2 of the men convicted were exonerated. The FBI files revealed heavy surveillance. The truth? Malcolm X wasn't killed for what he said in 1960. He was killed for who he was becoming in 1965. A unifier, a diplomat, a man who could bridge Black America with the global South. A man who could expose systemic oppression not just as a civil rights issue, but as a human rights crime. And for that, he was marked. But his voice echoes still, in every young rebel who asks why, in every truth teller who refuses to shrink. Malcolm X taught us that clarity is dangerous, and silence even more so.